Okay, it's 9 o'clock. I guess, shall we start? Essa, can you take roll, please, to see who the board members present?
Sure. I have Chair Don Mende, Directors Rona Fukumoto, Melvin Kahele, Shansa Sakata, Carol Riemann, and Kimberly Sparlin.
But I think Gary's here too.
I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess before we get into the regular agenda of this, we have a annual board of directors meeting where I'll call to order right now for the election of the board officers. So I guess in the past we've taken nominations, and then I guess we voted, or so I guess I'll open it up to the floor to see if there's any nominations for officers.
Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for your leadership over, the last year. It's been a pleasure working with you and under your leadership. And if you are so willing, I would be honored to nominate you again to lead us through the next year.
Okay.
Sure. Thanks.
I'm going to second your motion.
Thanks, Mel.
Thanks, Mel. Is there any other nominations coming from the floor?
Okay, but it looks like we're gonna have to push back the date of closing because I don't think that we can get it realistically, but we'll see. I guess
Oh, hi.
when you
If
guys
you're not speaking, can you please mute yourself
process,
until it's time to
you guys
speak? Thanks.
you wanna push back the closing.
I guess.
And Chair, can we have the board members be visually during the meeting, be visual?
Well, that's why part of
Okay.
it has to come back and then we have to go, it has to go to HICO and, it just has to go through.
Excuse me, Patty. Can you
Yeah,
please mute
he said-
yourself?
That's what I asked him.
Hello.
Yeah. That's what he
Thank you. Okay, yeah, so I guess, yeah, if board members, if you're present, please turn on your camera so then we can see you either respond if we can't hear you. So I guess nominations on the floor for chair. I guess all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for that vote of confidence. I don't know what I'm getting myself into for another year, but thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 2B, nominations for vice chair.
Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Gary Mackler to continue on as vice chair. I think he's done a great job in the past and his expertise is invaluable as we move forward.
Thank you, Karen.
Chair, I second.
Thank you, Mel. Yeah, I agree. He has been definitely a valuable member to the board.
Absolutely.
I guess, is there any other nominations? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for your confidence. It's a pleasure to serve.
Thank you, Gary. I guess any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. So item 2C for the position of secretary. Is there any nominations from the floor?
I would like to go ahead and nominate Rona. Sorry, Rona. I know it's a thankless job, but we appreciate what you do.
Okay.
I agree. Thank you.
God,
I'd
I'm
like-
gonna second.
All right, Mel, thanks, Don. Any other nominations? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you, Rona, for your continued service.
Thank you. It's an honor to serve.
All right, so this concludes our annual meeting for the election of the board officers. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thanks, Mel. Second.
Kim?
Thanks, Kim. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. So calling the regular meeting to order. We don't need to do another roll call, do we, Sandy?
I don't see anyone new that has entered.
Enjoying. Okay. Well, I guess we'll go with that then. So item 2 on the agenda is approval of the regular meeting minutes of as of June 10th, 2021 has circulated. Is there any, can I get a motion to approve and accept?
Move to approve.
Thanks, Gary. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, any discussion, any additions or deletions? If not, all in favor, approving?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 3A. So we have, I thought I saw him earlier, Senator Chang, the chair for the Senate Committee on Housing, is joining us today to give us a presentation. I'd like to turn it over to him. Thank you, Senator Chang, for joining us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your re-election. It's great to see some familiar faces and old friends in the audience and some new friends as well. I do have a presentation, so let me bring that up right now. I know that many of you may have seen this presentation or elements of it in the past, so I'll try to be efficient in terms of timing and also try to emphasize some of the new points that I want to make here today. First, I wanted to start with this provision of the Hawaii Revised Statutes. To achieve the housing objectives, it shall be the policy of this state to effectively accommodate the housing needs of Hawaii's people. Now, this is a statute. It's been there for a long time. The Hawaii State Planning Act is from the 1970s. And as the state, I am the state as part of the legislature, you are the state as an agency of the state. We have a statutory obligation to accommodate the housing needs of Hawaii's people. And as the development agency for the state of Hawaii, this is the big question that I want to leave you with. If not you, then who? If not now, then when? As you know, HHFDC is the development arm of the state of Hawaii when it comes to housing. And so I believe that HHFDC has a unique responsibility for ending the housing shortage. And I'm going to show you what we can do today to end that housing shortage together in partnership. All right, so things have changed in the last year. And one of the things that has changed, much to my surprise, is that housing prices have not gone down, they've not stabilized, they have continued to skyrocket upwards. A few months ago, I was observing that Kauai County hit a record median home price of over $1.04 million, when one of my colleagues assured me that that was an anomaly and would not happen again the next month. Well, sure enough, 1.06 million, and today Kauai median home prices are 1.125 million. In fact, for all 4 counties of the state of Hawaii, record high prices have been achieved, in many cases for several consecutive months, and 2 of our counties now, both Maui and Kauai, have median home prices over $1 million. Oahu at $979,000 this past month is approaching the $1 million mark. I think we can all agree that the housing shortage is as severe as it has ever been. I can tell you, as someone who's about to get married and wants to start a family, to buy a first home is extremely challenging. So it definitely hits in a more personal way than it ever has before. And there's some real world effects to these increases in home prices. For 4 straight years now, the population of the state of Hawaii has been in decline. We are now probably in our 5th straight year of population decline. The population isn't declining because a hurricane blew through and, forced everyone to leave, or because all of our auto factories shut down. The population is declining because people cannot afford to live here. And the primary reason that people cannot afford to live here is the cost of housing, which is driven by the shortage of housing. Often, as you know, when we try to solve a problem, we look at our friends on the mainland for help. As you folks may also know, during the pandemic, the housing shortage in California has worsened to degrees that even we might find appalling. And so clearly, our friends in the other 49 states have not solved this problem. Luckily, there are jurisdictions around the world that have solved this problem. Of course, Singapore being a notable one. There are others as well. I'll mention Vienna later on in this presentation, but let's go into the Singapore model a little bit just to see what we can learn from it. They start with something called a central provident fund. So in America, we have Social Security and Medicare withheld from everyone's paycheck to pay for healthcare and retirement pension. In Singapore, they have CPF, which covers both healthcare and retirement, but also 23% for housing. So everyone's saving 23% of their incomes for housing. So by the time that they get married and they're ready to buy that first home as a new family, they go to an agency called the Housing and Development Board. This is you. This is their equivalent of HHFDC. And HHFDCs in Singapore has been building an enormous amount of housing. In the peak decade of the 1980s, over 30,000 units per year. More recently, in the decade of the 2010s, on average, almost 20,000 units per year. 20,000 units per year. That's just one developer. And let me just, this slide and the next one that follows are the only magic trick in this entire slide deck. We can talk about the various nuances of the Singapore model, but if there's only one thing we adopt from the Singapore model, it should be this, which is that they build enough supply to meet demand. And so here we see that, in fact, the government is very deliberate and intentional about doing that, right? They intend to maintain a consistent but small oversupply of housing. And they do that by allowing the private sector to build housing, certainly, but they themselves are producing directly about 80% of the housing stock in Singapore. Okay, I do not believe that in Hawaii, we will achieve an end to the housing shortage without an agency directly taking responsibility to maintain a consistent but small oversupply. All right, so let's contrast the 20,000 units a year by HDB. According to the HHFDC annual reports, we're seeing on average maybe about 1,000, maybe a little bit less than 1,000 units a year produced by HHFDC. As you know, HHFDC's own studies show that we need 6,000 or more units per year. So HHFDC is coming nowhere close to fully supplying the market demand. And as I think we can all agree, the entire market of both public and private sector developers alike is coming nowhere close to supplying the market demand. All right, Singapore's HDB does produce so much housing, and because it's an ownership model, 90% of the nation of Singapore are homeowners. In the United States, it's 63%, and in Hawaii, one of the lowest states, it's only 57%. And this is what they're building. Their median unit is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath unit, 969 square feet. Of course, it's newly built, and they sell this unit for only $180,000. Now, contrast that with the market in Hawaii. We see some comps today of relatively new construction units that are pushing probably the $1 million mark in today's market. And this is what they're building. It's attractive, it's well-maintained, it's very innovative. In the upper right corner, you see the Tengah New Town, which has a car-free urban center. They buried the highways and roads so that at the ground level, it's pedestrian only. Now, a lot of people asked, well, why do you have such a severe housing shortage in Hawaii? Is it because you don't have enough land? Well, of course, it's all relative. This is the actual size of Singapore. It's less than half the size of Oahu. It has over 5 times the population. And they, of course, have abundant, affordable housing for everyone. So in my opinion, the obstacles to housing supply in Hawaii are not technical. They're not legal. They're not economic. They are primarily political. They are a matter of political will. And so let me outline now my plan, the Aloha Homes Plan, which you've all heard a little bit about, to try to explain how we overcome that political resistance and how we build that political will so that ultimately your agency, HHFDC, will finally grasp this bull by the horns. And let's start with the issue of affordability. So the study that was commissioned in Act 167 that your agency delivered earlier this year says that a $400,000 price is a realistic price to develop a 2-bedroom condo unit. So in the past, I've advocated for $300,000, but you know what? Let's go with $400,000. With a low 3% down payment that's available to first-time homebuyers under existing federal programs, you could buy one of these units with only $12,000 down. And that, according to HUD 2020 statistics, is affordable to an AMI level of only 56%, which is a family of 4 making $70,504. So if you picture a mom and dad with 2 kids, the 2 parents are making each about $35,000, which I understand is more than a lot of people make, but is now firmly, I think we can all agree, firmly within the local working class community of the state of Hawaii. And so that's the community that we should be trying to target. Of course, how realistic are these numbers? Well, I will direct your attention to Ryder Levitt Bucknall, an international consulting firm's quarterly construction cost reports for Honolulu multifamily housing in the second quarter of 2021. We have a per square foot cost of $215 to $470 per square foot of hard cost. Okay, so even if you plus, let's say you take that up to, $800 a square foot when you include all the soft costs and all the rest, that means you can still deliver a condo for $400,000 of 500 square feet. And I used to live in a 550 square foot 2-bedroom, which was not large, but it could, a 500 square foot unit could definitely accommodate 2 bedrooms. And at $800 a square foot, I think we can all agree that that is a realistic cost estimate. Of course, it needs to be affordable to the taxpayer, which is why we're so fixated on the revenue neutral price, because the taxpayer is clearly unwilling, if you remember the 2018 election, to increase property taxes to pay for a worthy cause like education. So that's why the emphasis here is on a revenue neutral model. All right, here's another big one, especially when the rubber meets the road. What does local mean? To me, it means a Hawaii resident who is an owner-occupant and who owns no other real property. Now, actually, in HHFDC's existing administrative rules, these are all requirements. So I'm not particularly concerned about this, but we do need to communicate to the general public that these units would not be available to wealthy overseas investors, that they would only be available to local people. So in the past, I've proposed a 99-year leasehold interest in order to fulfill this ownership requirement. I think that most people in the state of Hawaii want to own their own homes. But as you folks know, HHFDC and I have worked closely together to try to move a 99-year lease bill through the legislature, and it has not been successful over the last 3 or 4 years. And in fact, in this last legislative session, that bill died under a flurry of opposition in the Native Hawaiian community in the Hawaii House of Representatives. So, I recognize that while a 99-year lease is probably the most easy to explain and the most easy to understand for Hawaii home buyers, it's not the only option that we have out there. In other jurisdictions, notably Vienna, you have public rental housing where you're able to rent an apartment, and all of these are public housing units in the city of Vienna. They are just as attractive, if not more so, than those in our city of Singapore, and they are all for rent. And they're basically all under a system where you can live there and rent there as long as you want, and your rent will never go up. Okay. that may be described in some quarters, in the private sector especially, as rent control. I understand that that's a word that has a lot of connotations here in the United States. But when you go to American jurisdictions like San Francisco, like New York, where they do have historic rent control, people really desire those rent control units. As someone who's lived in Manhattan, the most desirable residential unit in Manhattan is not a beautiful co-op in a Candela pre-war building on the Upper East Side on Park Avenue. It is a rent control unit in a village, the Greenwich Village, with a lease that's existed since the 1960s, and they're paying, less than $100 a month. So if we were able to market these units to the Hawaii home buyer and say, look, these units are rent, but you can stay here as long as you want. You will never be evicted. And even though the rent might seem a little high now, it will never go up as long as you live. I sincerely believe that there will be a market for that product. Of course, we talk about resale housing because a 99-year lease is a long lease, and many people will probably need to or want to sell those leases before they pass on. And so what we've proposed is a 75% equity share. So every time those units trade in the secondary market, 75% of the profit goes back to the state. And of course, those profits, those revenues can be a potentially very large stream to pay for the upkeep and maintenance of these units, which, as we know for tall towers, gets very expensive as they age, as the recent experience in Miami clearly demonstrates. All right, for homes, I think that there's a lot of talk about tiny homes, about container homes, and I just want to be very clear right now that as a young person looking to start a family, I am not interested in a container home. I am not interested in a tiny home. I think it's a generational matter. If my parents were able to buy a single family home with enough space to raise me and my family, I don't think it's realistic to expect future generations to make do with a 200 square foot tiny home. As someone who's lived in a 178 square foot apartment, it's just not realistic to start a family. And so if we are building housing for families, we are going to need to provide amenities like schools, like access to transit. And that's really the biggest one, I would say. The magical amenity, the magical real estate amenity that is being offered at an extremely premium price in developments like Sky, Ala Moana, like Park Lane, is a 5-minute walk to everything, including public transportation. And of course, that's what they offer in Singapore. That's what they offer in Hong Kong. And that's how I believe that we can all live in the most efficient manner possible. And I'll get to that more a little bit later. Okay, finally, for all, I would not be proposing, and I think it is extremely important that we not add any requirements for a first-time home buyer or for an income cap. Both in Singapore and Vienna, they have no income restrictions on secondary buyers in Singapore and on the initial buyers in both on the initial buyers, because even though there may be a price limit or a income ceiling when you move in, it does not matter how much money you make afterwards. You can get a raise, you can get a promotion, and you could be making $1 million a year as long as you met the income restriction when you first moved in. So indeed, in Singapore, the current president of Singapore lived in public housing until she was required to move out due to security concerns. So in Vienna, again, the same principle. You can move in with a rent control public housing unit, but you have an income restriction when you first move in. But if you get raises and promotions, your rent will never go up and you will never be forced to leave. And that's how you promote the idea of income mixing. And I think that's a really important one to emphasize, because income mixing, units for all, treating all people equally, public services being built and available to the entire public, is the fundamental core notion of the successful housing programs in Singapore, Vienna, and pretty much everywhere in the world. Everyone gets one. Okay, here's a concrete example here in the United States. Here we have the federal budget this is a little bit outdated, but you can see that the largest 4 sections of the federal budget comprise the vast majority, and they are Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, defense, and interest on the debt. For your information, that small blue box in the corner is HUD, so that's your LIHTC and other programs. What do Medicare, Social Security, and defense have in common, and therefore largely interest on the debt? They're for everybody, no income restrictions. Even Donald Trump qualifies for Medicare, Social Security, and protection by DoD, which is why even Donald Trump has pledged never to cut Social Security, Medicare, and defense. Okay. Another analogy that I like to give here is public schools. So I think we can all agree that new construction of housing is rather like our public school, is rather like our private school system. It's very expensive and it's only for the few. It does not produce enough supply for the entire population. You know, various programs like inclusionary zoning, where we force private developers to develop a certain percentage of their units at a below market price, they're like forcing private schools to give scholarships. And that's all well and good, but that's not going to solve the housing shortage. What we need is public school for housing, a mass option for everyone, regardless of whether you're rich or poor. That is a low-cost option where rich and poor can go to school side by side. Indeed, if Pierre Omidyar or if Larry Ellison, two of our wealthiest residents here in Hawaii, were to decide to send their kids to public school instead of private school, and then to community college and then to UH afterwards, we would be delighted as taxpayers, even though they would be telling us that we would be forced to pay through our taxes for their kids' education when clearly they're capable of paying for their own kids' education. Why are we okay with that? We're okay with that because public services are for the public. Indeed, I firmly believe that income restrictions are un-American, dividing this country by class and by income.
Hello, if you're not speaking, can you please put yourself on mute, please? I apologize for that. Hello? Thank you. Give her feedback from somebody. Where's that coming from? Hey, Darren, can you put yourself on mute, please? Sorry about that.
No problem.
Interrupted. Go ahead.
No problem. So speaking of our public school system, you know, I want to really emphasize to everyone here that the issue is not demand, it is supply. And that's why I've been so focused on producing enough supply to meet demand. So every year on average, our public school system graduates about 11,000 high school seniors like these recent Hilo High School graduates. That, of course, is not even counting our private school graduates, which comprise about 17%, the highest in the country. Okay. Now, until we as a state close that gap, okay, because we graduate about 11,000 students, but we produce only about 2,000 units of housing per year. Until that gap is closed, we are telling most of these students, you have to leave and you cannot come back. This is not your home. This will never be your home again. That is the policy decision that we have made because we have within our power the ability to build a home for you, but we have chosen to not do that. Okay? I do not want to tell that to our young people. I never want to tell that to our future generations. And until we do something about it, that is what we are saying to our future generations. That is why it is imperative for us today to make that commitment, to take that step forward, to actually decide as a policy matter that we are going to end the housing shortage. It will not happen overnight. It will take time. It might start with a pilot program, but we must grab that bull by the horns to actually end the housing shortage. Here's just a summary slide of everything that I've presented thus far in terms of the legal framework of the Aloha Homes program. Maybe at this point, Chair, I'll pause to take questions before starting a second part of the presentation to focus on urban planning. But, you know, I've covered a lot of ground and I wanted to give a chance for Q&A at this point.
All right, thanks. Board members, anybody have any questions for Senator Chang before he moves on?
Can I just ask, is there any information on whether residents want to live in these highly dense, high-rise, buildings that you're promoting? I don't know. I just get the sense that there's a lot of our community that we're prefer to stay, rural?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we do have that information. As you folks are undoubtedly familiar, the Howard Hughes Master Plan for Kaka'ako includes 16 towers on 40 acres. That is a Stanley Chang Aloha Homes level of density. And they are selling those units for $40 million per penthouse. I think we live in an age where it is clear that people are willing to pay a lot of money for a highly dense, highly walkable type of environment. And of course, Kaka'ako is not just the only place. You also have Chinatown downtown. You also have areas like Waikiki that are extremely dense and that people want to live in. I do acknowledge that there are people in our community for whom living in a very rural lifestyle in a community like Ka'aava, for instance, is the only way that they want to live. And to them, I would say this program would not touch 1 inch of any existing residential community. If you like your existing Ka'aava rural lifestyle, it will never be touched. I can assure you of that, because all we will do is redevelop existing state-owned non-residential lands. So if you like your existing single-family home, you will have no fear, because you can live in it as long as you want. You can pass it to your heirs, you can buy it, you can sell it, you can do whatever you want to it. We are not disrupting anything about the existing lifestyle of the existing single-family homeowners.
Thank you, Kim. Anyone else?
Chair, I have a question for the Senator. Senator Chang, how is Singapore staying ahead of their housing demand? How are they financing that?
So financing is always a big issue, right? And so that's why I've proposed a revenue neutral model. So Singapore actually has a revenue neutral model as well. In fact, if you really look closely at their government balance sheets, and I don't have it here, but I have it in another slide deck, their housing program is actually revenue positive. They're actually making a profit from their public housing. And so, in many ways, because HDB is a developer, just like HHFDC, they finance their housing like any other developer. They would, pay for their expenses in planning and developing a site, and then they recoup those expenses through the sales of the units when the time comes. And that's something that HHFDC could do, whether it's through an RFP process, say designating a parcel and saying, all right, developers, here are your requirements. You have to build at least this many units. They have to be of at least this many square feet and this many bedrooms or whatever. And you can sell them for no more than X dollars per unit or X dollars per square foot, or however HHFDC could do it. And then the developers, would be able to figure out with their own pencils, can I make this work or not? And they could bid, and potentially HHFDC would not have to put in any state cash, any taxpayer cash at all, never, from day one. Now, if there are, larger scale, units, say, if SB 737 2021, which I introduced, passes, and we get 200 towers on top of Aloha Stadium and a substantial amount of new infrastructure needs to be built, it would be a little bit more complicated to build the infrastructure up front and then recoup those costs from the 100,000 new units that are built. But ultimately, if you're building 100,000 units of housing, no matter how vast the infrastructure needs, they would be affordable, spread over 100,000 new units. So, I guess to me, I would say, financing can be done just as any other developer would do it. And again, I want to emphasize that this is a revenue neutral model, and I would not contemplate taxpayer subsidies of any kind. Now, if, say, Congress sends down infrastructure funding from Washington, that's great, that's gravy. But this proposal is not at all dependent on any taxpayer subsidies whatsoever.
Other than the land, because you're saying it's state-owned land.
That's right. But as the Act 167 study noted, the land cost, if you're building at this level of density, the land cost is rather small. So the state can, like Singapore's HDB, they go out and buy land. HDB pays market price for land.
And do we have developers lined up for this model?
I guess we won't know until that RFP goes out, right? I mean, if you set the RFP and you say you can charge no more than $400 a square foot for the final product, probably developers might say that's probably quite low. But, like I said, I think if you set reasonable terms, $400,000 a unit for a 2-bedroom, you know, for a 99-year lease, or if it's a rent control apartment and you just say, look, you can charge whatever rent you want, but it can never go up as long as the tenant remains in residence. You know, developers are smart people. They'll put on their thinking caps. They'll work out their pencils, and you know, this model is working today in Singapore. It's working today in Vienna, and so it can work here. And so for all those who say, well, Hawaii is not Singapore, in 1961 was one of the poorest cities in Asia when they started their mass home building, you know, program. In Vienna in 1920 was devastated by World War I. The Habsburg Empire had just collapsed. The housing shortage was so severe that, you know, they were forcing homeless people to live inside existing homeowners' empty bedrooms. Okay, the real marker of when a truly ambitious housing program gets started is not when you have a comfortable society, but when you have one that's been pushed to its limit, where things are truly desperate. And I would argue that here in Hawaii today, we should be acting as though we are truly desperate. I am truly desperate. You know, the generations of young people who have to leave this state, those are truly desperate people. Okay, and I think we need to start. It's high time that we start acting as truly as meeting their needs with the urgency that they deserve. Mr. Chair, if there are further questions, maybe we can address them afterwards. I do want to get to the urban planning section here,
Sure.
and I can try to be quite efficient with that as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, so how are we going to accomplish this? And we already touched on a little bit of this earlier, and it's high density. This is an existing extremely high density project, 250 units per acre that sold out within days. It's 801 South Street, as you are undoubtedly familiar, and this was a market price unit. These were market price, you know, home buyers paying $500,000-$600,000. Clearly, again, there is a demand for this product existing latent in Hawaii today. Otherwise, projects like this wouldn't sell out right away. You know, they would take state-owned lands near rail stations like these here. And here we have a listing just for reference of existing state-owned lands, of which several are currently under consideration for redevelopment. OCCC being one prominent example, Aloha Stadium being another prominent example. Aloha Stadium today, their website is saying that they're going to build only 3,300 units, but if we build that 100-acre site with 250 units per acre on just 7 sites, you could produce 67,500 units of housing, which would wipe out 10 years worth of housing demand, according to HHFDC's own studies. And so let me illustrate the benefits of high density a little bit further. Here we have 67,500 existing households. These homes exist today. Of course, there is some high density in this area. If you guys can picture the Aiea to Kapolei Makakilo area, there is some, you know, townhomes, there is some condo towers, but most of these are single family homes. If you build at a level of 250 units per acre, this is all the land you will need, smaller than Eva by Gentry. If you build at the 585 unit per acre level, which is what Hong Kong currently builds in its public housing, that's all the land that you would need. A very small amount of land. At this level of density, it is easy to see that for 100 years, for even 200 years worth of housing demand, we will never need to touch those beautiful rural subdivisions. We can preserve the island lifestyle in amber forever. All we will need to do is to touch those existing state-owned lands in the urban center near those transit-oriented areas. And those 7 sites that we already discussed, 67,500 units on 7 sites at 250 units per acre, this is what they look like. So really, we don't need a lot of land. And in terms of how it would actually look and feel, you know, the question came earlier, about do people actually want to live in this type of urban high density environment? And of course, we have real world examples in Kaka'ako and other neighborhoods in Hawaii today. But, you know, let me just take you on a world tour. Here we have the Barry Gotique of Barcelona. We have Greenwich Village in New York, Ginza in Tokyo, and the North End of Boston. These areas are very diverse. They are all some of the most popular neighborhoods of those cities for both residents and tourists alike. They're thriving, vibrant neighborhoods. They're primarily historic, although not all of them. Ginza's, quite a kind of a shiny and new area. And it doesn't matter where in the world you go. Here we have Istanbul, we have Cairo, we have Taipei, Paris, Seoul, Lisbon, Venice. Wherever in the world you go, including in Hawaii and historic parts of Hawaii like Chinatown, perhaps the oldest standing neighborhood in Hawaii today, you have this model of high density, ground floor retail, no setbacks, and very little public open space. Clearly, it works because this is how humans have been developing cities for thousands of years, really until the advent of the automobile in the 20th century. The ultimate expression of that is, of course, Hong Kong, which we can see some screenshots here. Look how dense these units are. You don't have setbacks here, right? All the buildings are built up to the property line. You have a lot of retail at the ground level. And I want you to observe that all of this is mom and pop retail, okay? These are not gentrified neighborhoods. These are not Louis Vuitton and Gucci at the ground level. We have here little mom and pop restaurants. In that corner, that shop with the red sign is a one-ton shop. And I actually used to live here when I was a toddler. And I don't remember having been to that one-ton shop, but one look and I can see that that's going to be the best one-ton I've ever had in my life. Okay. And that, this is a really great way to live. If you're a senior citizen and you don't have the ability or you don't want to get in your car to go to the pharmacy, the grocery store, the one-ton shop, the bank, the post office, the pharmacy, the dry cleaner, here, all you would need to do is to take an elevator and you can access every service in just a 5-minute walk, including vibrant and robust and really on-time public transportation. And so I just want to emphasize, this is the high density environment that we're all, potentially scared of, but it really, really works. And these people are not, as you can see, driving their cars. None of these towers have parking garages. And as you can see, the street level parking is really just for service vehicles, for pickups and drop-offs and so on. People are not using their cars to commute. And I think that if we create new communities, we can achieve this level of housing as long as we plan for them, as long as they're really convenient to public transportation. And speaking of those 20th century cities that were developed for cars, what I'm really arguing against here is this phenomenon known as towers in a park. Ebenezer Howard in The Garden City, Le Corbusier, Towers in a Park really popularized this model. It reached its ultimate expression in the 1960s and 70s under the Great Society era of public housing. Our friends over at HPHA should be very familiar with this because this is KPT. It is high density, but we have huge setbacks. We have huge amounts of open space, no ground floor retail. And a lot of people, I consider myself pretty far to the left as a politician, but I'm sure there are people farther to the left than I am. I have yet to meet a politician in the United States who is so far to the left that they consider Great Society era public housing a success. And often they attribute the problem to, the concentration of poverty, which I'm totally against, as you know, because I am for no income restrictions. So I'm totally against concentrating poverty. But in my opinion, it's not even the concentration of poverty that produces the problems that we're all familiar with. Really, to me, the issue is, these are all low-income people, right? I know these were my relatives who fled mainland China for Hong Kong back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. These are not rich people. And as you can see, they're still not rich people. But what makes the difference is, in my opinion, the urban design. When you have this many eyes on the street in a Jane Jacobs, sort of fashion like Greenwich Village, New York, when you have this much ground floor retail, it's totally safe because you're always in a crowd. In Waikiki, for example, you could be, an elderly woman from a foreign country who doesn't speak a word of English, but you're totally comfortable walking down Kalakaua Avenue late at night because there's hundreds of people around, even though Waikiki is the highest crime precinct probably in the entire state. And so what I'm arguing against is the towers in a park model. We can have the high density, just don't build it like this. If you build it more like this, we will be able to achieve, that vibrant, thriving Chinatown, Waikiki-like environment. Here's some more towers in a park. This is, of course, in Singapore. People are not really going to be walking down sidewalks like this. There's just nothing to attract their interest. And in the second photo here, this is a really wide road. And so the cars are going to be going really fast. Again, I want to summarize here. A lot of these benefits are provided by the unique urban planning, or I should say the non-unique urban planning, or I should say the urban de-planning. If we went back to a world where, urban planners weren't sort of throwing setbacks around everything, we would be able to have a more, thoughtful, the way that cities have always been built, like Chinatown, that may have a lot of crime, but are, people still feel comfortable with to walk around safely. And finally, I want to, of course, emphasize that this is the main question here. Maybe you disagree with some of the specific points that I raise in this presentation, but I think we all need to agree. Is it not HHFDC that needs to grab this bull by the horns? And if not now, then when? Finally, let me just state that to address some of these questions of high density, we're organizing a conference on August 12th. It is called 1,000 Homes Per Acre. And we're going to be bringing together experts from places like Vancouver, where the Sanok development is owned by the Squamish Nation, an indigenous First Nation of British Columbia. They are building a new market rental housing project for 500 units per acre with 6,000 7,000 units, 1,000 car parking stalls, and 6,000 bike parking stalls. It's going to talk about Hong Kong, which we've already visited. It's going to talk about visualizations of what these various levels of density look like. And we're also going to engage with some of the traditional opponents of high density in our urban spaces. That's going to be coming up on August 12th. And I'll make sure that all of you folks have invitations to that conference. It's going to be entirely free and open to the public. And we're also doing, to talk about some of the different housing models around the world, solving the housing shortage, how 4 cities did it, a virtual delegation. Some of you will be familiar with the delegation that we did to Singapore and Hong Kong in 2019, where we really studied those 2 models in depth. In 2021, we don't have the option of traveling in person, but we will be taking a virtual tour over 4 months, August through November, with a couple of meetings over Zoom in each of 4 cities, Singapore, Hong Kong, Vienna, and Houston, to understand 4 extremely different models that to one degree or another have solved their housing shortages. So again, maybe you agree with the Singapore model, maybe you agree with the Vienna model, or maybe you're not in favor of such large public sector interventions and you're in favor of a private sector model. Well, Houston is a model where it's the fastest growing city in the United States for over 10 years. And they have an entirely private sector led model where they have a laissez-faire zoning model and developers can build anything, anywhere, anytime. You can demolish your home and you can build an office building and an oil refinery and no one is going to stop you. And they have below US median home prices in, again, the fastest growing city in the United States. So those applications are available now and are due on July 15th, so just a week away. Of course, we've had many participants from HHFDC over the years, and I would love for the board members and staff members of HHFDC to participate in both our virtual delegation as well as our conference on August 12th. And with that, Mr. Chair, let me leave it there. I'd be happy to take further questions and continue to talk about these housing ideas with you.
Thank you, Senator. Thanks for that information. So August 12th, right?
That's right.
Okay. I guess I'll open up to the board members. Is there any other questions for Senator Chang?
Chair, I got a question.
Yeah, sure, Mel.
Senator Mel Kahele from the Ironworkers. How are you doing? How are you doing?
Great to hear from you again. Long time no see, Uncle Mel.
Long time, really. Senator, I got a question. We've always supported affordable housing, construction. I guess maybe my concern now is, House Bill 862 just recently got passed. Governor vetoed. I believe the legislators went and overrode his veto. So with the 60,000 plus units, how are we going to be, what's the problem with now with transporting people to and from the Honolulu area with the rail project that may not be completely funded to take it all the way to Ala Moana? I live in Kapolei, been here over 40 years, and we've had a traffic problem going back since I moved here. We thought rail was going to be the solution, but it seemed like we do have a problem now with the financing of the project. How are we going to be able to get people from one location to the other with all these additional housing units coming up? And yeah, Stanley, I support housing 100%, affordable housing 200%. So I guess that's my concern. What do we do if the rail doesn't get completed?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say that I completely support completing the rail to Ala Moana as planned. You know, I know there's a lot of talk now about the cost overruns and delays, and of course, those might be inevitable with any large building project. But you know, a rail to nowhere is not going to solve our problems. The voters wanted and got a rail to Ala Moana. Public opinion surveys have confirmed that stopping the rail at Middle Street is the least popular option. Nobody wants to stop the rail at Middle Street. And so I really firmly think that whether it's the legislature, whether it's the city, we need to get serious about ensuring that this project has the resources it needs to be built to completion. But let's just say that in some alternate reality, the rail is not completed all the way to Ala Moana. And let's say that it just exists from East Kapolei to, you know, Middle Street or something. I believe that if these units are truly selling for only $400,000, which, as you guys saw, is less, it's less than half the price of the market price for 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units. That is so far below the market price that even if they're on a rail that only goes to Middle Street, that rail will still, in my opinion, go to enough places that those towers will have residents in them. And, you know, I believe that new businesses will grow and develop along that limited number of rail stations over time, because now you will have access to this great workforce that will not need a car to get from, say, East Kapolei to Aloha Stadium, or from Middle Street to, you know, LCC, or whatever the case may be. You know, there are a lot of, neighborhoods, you know, in a lot of these places that we're familiar with, like, you know, in DC, the metro doesn't go to Georgetown. In New York, the metro didn't go to the East Side, 2nd Avenue until very recently. It is possible to have a system that doesn't go everywhere, but that is still very successful and that still lots and lots of people rely on. So I don't think that even if the rail were to end at Middle Street, I don't think that this would be, I don't think that it would be a problem, or it wouldn't be the biggest problem, at least.
All right, Senator. Thank you very much. I don't want to consume up too much time. I appreciate you being candid about things, and hopefully the rail takes us all the way to Ala Moana. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel. Thank you, Senator Chang. I guess if there's no other questions, appreciate your presentation here, and I know, I guess if we have any other questions in the future, we can just definitely just reach out to you.
Absolutely. And again, thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members, for the opportunity to talk with you this morning.
Thank you, Senator Chang. All right, thank you, everybody. Just, I guess, quick housekeeping. I noticed that Gloria Chang signed on. She's the Budget and Finance designee for Craig Rai, and I think Mike McCartney signed in, right? I thought I saw him. Okay, so moving on, sorry, my mouse is stuck here. Let's go on to item number 3B. This is to approve an award. Wait, does anybody need a break before we head on to the regular agenda? No? Okay. Okay, so item 3B, this is to approve an award of federal and state low-income housing tax credits from the state's 2021 volume cap for the Hawking Hale project located in Honolulu, Oahu, TMK number 117003001.
Well, motion first.
Move that we approve agenda item, what's the number? 3B staff recommendation.
Thanks, Mike. Can I get a second?
A second, Don.
Thanks, Mel.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, distinguished members of the board. Very much appreciate your time. This for action is to approve an award federal, state, low-income housing tax credits from the state's 2021 volume cap for Hocking Hollow project located in Honolulu, Oahu. Hocking Hollow involves the acquisition and conversion of an existing historic commercial building and is proposed to be 40 units of affordable rental housing targeted for individuals and families earning incomes of 50% of the area gross median income or less. The conversion and renovation will consist of studios, 1 and 2 bedroom units, and will also provide a playground, picnic area, community meeting room, elevator, laundry room. What we are requesting today is $700,298 in federal low-income housing tax credits over a 10-year period, as well as the same amount in state low-income housing tax credits over a 5-year period. In addition, we are looking for $12,350,000 in rental housing revolving fund monies. At our last board meeting, you approved the 9% awards for Villages of Laopua, Kaiaolu o Halalea Apartment Phase 1B, Meho'ula Vista 4. That's a total of $3,591,513 out of $4,446,372 of our 2021 annual amount. So that left a balance of approximately $814,000. The board did at last meeting defer an award for Hocking Hollow, specifically because staff wanted to take a more conservative approach when looking at the project to ensure that it met HUD's new 2021 maximum tenant contribution, essentially rent limits, as they had changed. Each of the other projects who were considered for award, they were also analyzed and evaluated in the same approach. And so this did not affect or change the applicant score. Again, this was because we wanted to be conservative. So HHFDC recommends that $700,298 in low-income housing tax credits be awarded to the Hocking Hollow project based on not only its criteria point system, project feasibility, the availability of 9% credits, as well as the housing interest of the state of Hawaii. If we do award, shall you award, there will be approximately $114,000 in federal and state tax credits, 9% tax credits remaining, which we will carry forward to 2022 next year. So I'd also, prior to providing a recommendation, I'd like to introduce members of the development team. That is Mark Hashem, as well as Kevin Unamori and architect Len Wiara, to speak briefly about the project, which they are very excited to do. So if you could introduce yourselves, that would be wonderful. And if you need to, please add to the project.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Aloha, everybody. My name is Mark Hashem. I want to thank HHFDC and the board for allowing me to speak on behalf of the development team. Kevin Unemori is on the line also, and also our architect is also watching in. So I will after watching Senator Chang's proposal, he upped the ante, so I figured I have to come up with a presentation of my own. So I whipped up a quick, whatchamacallit, presentation for you guys, and hopefully I can share it. So this way you guys have a better idea of what we're proposing or our projects has. There we go. Can you see that? So this is the Hawking Hall building.
Not yet. We can't see it yet.
Oh, you can't see it? Okay. Share.
Okay, now we can.
Okay, so this is the Hawking Hall building. It's located on King and Nuuanu on the corner of the historic district in Chinatown. So this is what it looks like currently right now. On the new, basically upstairs, the upstairs is completely vacant, and it's been vacant for decades, for at least the last 10 years. You might know the first floor is the First Hawaiian Bank Chinatown branch. Actually, First Hawaiian Bank's intent is to vacate the property once the lease from the actual owners, it's on a long-term ground lease. Once the ground lease expires, their intent is to vacate the property. We are purchasing the property from the original owner, which is Mr. Hawking, Alfred Hawking. People always ask me, how do you get the name Hawking? But Mr. Hawking is up on the upper left-hand corner. He's actually he's a prominent businessman in the late 1800s to the early 1900s in Hawaii. He started off on Maui with a sugarcane plantation. He didn't do too well, so he moved to Oahu in the early 1900s. When he was on Maui, he was actually not a state senator, a Republic of Hawaii senator for the island of Maui at that time. When he moved to Oahu, he eventually became, I guess, a city council member, and he was the chair of the Honolulu supervisors, or the Oahu supervisors, as you can see in this article dated, what is this? 1904. So I guess that's similar to being the mayor of Honolulu back in the day. But anyways, he went on to found Primo Beer. So he's actually more famous for starting Primo Beer. And you know, the brewery or the building that whatchamacallit it is in HCDA. He built that building as the Honolulu Brewing Company. And then later on in 1916, he built the Hawking Hall. Originally, the building was, when he first built it, it was actually a hotel. The ground floor was residential. Upstairs was, the ground floor was commercial. Upstairs was residential. It was a hotel. It was more kind of like a long-term stay type of hotel, catered towards the businessmen the traveling businessmen of the day, where they would come in and bring their products and stay in Oahu for quite a while. So, yeah. In 1960, American Security Bank came in and converted the building to completely office space. So upstairs, from that time on, the building was used solely for office and no longer residential. And so we're proposing to do to convert it back to housing, to a 40-unit affordable housing project, using the LIHTC credits and the historical tax credits. We also, in our financial plan, we have $3 million of historic tax credit equity coming into the project. So from my understanding, we're the first project in Hawaii to propose to do a LIHTC with combination of historic tax credits. And that's basically the project in a nutshell. And we're here to answer any questions if any of the board members or anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions from the board? No?
Yeah, if there's no questions, Chair, then I'd like to move for recommendation that the board approve the award of federal and state 9% local housing tax credits, the amount of $700,298 over 10 years in federal, 5 years for state for the Hockey Holly project.
All right. I guess for the board members who are voting, can you please turn on your cameras? So we can see your vote. I guess all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 3C. This is to approve a rental housing revolving fund project award for the Hakin Hale project located in Honolulu, Oahu, TMK 117003001. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Thanks again. This for action is related to the previous for action Hocking Holly. Specifically, it's for the rental housing revolving fund award, as I had mentioned. The loan amount is $12,350,000. The term and maturity will be 57 years. Years during construction, years 1 through 2, 0 interest, and once it's complete, so after year 2, we're charging 25 basis points or 0.25%. I request that the board and recommend their approval of the $12,350,000 rental housing revolving fund loan for Hocking.
All right. Any questions from the board?
Chair, I have a question on this request. The rental housing revolving fund works out to about $308,000 per unit based on the 40-unit project and the amount of rental housing revolving fund financing presented in the stack. That, to my recollection, exceeds kind of the more recent precedent of how much rental housing revolving funds per unit we have been approving for projects. I think we've been in the higher range going up to about 180 or 185,000 per unit. And this one is significantly above that. And while those funds may be necessary to fill the gap to make this project financed, I just wanted to point that out and to ask that staff please consider the efficiency of the resources that we have in looking into the future for utilizing this source.
Duly noted, Vice Chair. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Gary. All right. I guess calling for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item 3D. So this one is to approve Resolution 156, which provides for official intent with respect to the issuance of May multifamily tax-exempt revenue bonds, and 2, reservation of low-income housing tax credits for the West Kawili Street Senior Veteran Housing Project located in Hilo, Hawaii, TMK 324057030.
Move to
Motion
approve.
done.
Thank you.
Second.
Morning, Chair, members of the board. The subject for action requests the approval of resolution number 156, which provides official intent to issue Hula May multifamily tax exempt revenue bonds and the reservation of 4% low-income housing tax credits for the West Kabili Street Senior Veteran Housing Project. I'll provide a short overview of the bond program and the LIHTC program, as this is the first project that is being recommended for an award of Hula May multifamily bonds and 4% LIHTC from the February 17, 2021 application round. The Hula May Multifamily Bond Program is a federally authorized program which allows HHFDC to issue tax-exempt private activity revenue bonds to finance the acquisition and rehabilitation or the development of privately owned affordable rental projects. The IRS places an annual cap on the amount of private activity bonds that the state can allocate. For 2021, the state received $324,995,000 in bond cap, which the Department of Budget and Finance oversees. Half of the bond cap is available to the counties with the balance to the state. HHFDC is one of many competing issuers that utilizes the bond cap. HHFDC can use bond cap for its multifamily, single family, and mortgage credit certificate programs. For multifamily projects, HHFDC is a conduit issuer of the bonds where repayment of the bonds is a responsibility of the project owners. The Tax Reform Act of 1986 established a low-income housing tax credit program which allows projects to receive tax credits based on qualified expenditures on affordable housing rental units. These qualified affordable housing projects generally monetize the tax credits by taking on investors that have an ownership interest in the project, and then they use the LIHTC to offset their tax obligations. Only a designated state or local housing credit agency can award LIHTC. The state of Hawaii has only designated HHFDC as its LIHTC awarding agency. In accordance with Section 42 of the Internal Revenue Code, HHFDC published a qualified allocation plan which outlines the criteria that HHFDC used to evaluate and allocate LIHTC. Additionally, a project may receive 4% LIHTC in conjunction with a multifamily tax-exempt bond issuance. On February 17, 2021, Hilo Na Koa LP submitted a request for a tax-exempt issuance of up to $24 million from the Hula May Multifamily Bond Program, approximately $1.9 million in federal and state LIHTC from the 4% non-volume cap pool, and approximately $16.5 million for a rental housing revolving fund loan for the West Kabili Senior Veteran Housing Project. A separate for action is being presented as item E on the agenda for the rental housing revolving fund loan. The financing request will support the construction of the West Kabili Street Senior Veteran Housing Project. The project is a 92-unit rental facility for elderly households with a preference for elderly veterans and elderly spouses of deceased veterans at or below 30, 50, 60, and 80% AMGI on the island of Hawaii. The project has received project-based vouchers for 50 units. Improvements consist of 4 two-story garden-style elevator service buildings and 1 community center. Hilo Na Koa LP is a single asset real estate holding company. The general partner is HKI Kabili LLC. The sole member of HKI Kabili LLC is Hui Kauhale Inc., a 501c3 corporation. Hui Kauhale Inc. is an experienced affordable housing developer based in Hawaii and is controlled by EAH Inc., a national affordable housing developer. Their most recent projects in Hawaii are Nohona Hale, Ola Kailima Arts Phase Lost, and Eva Villages Phase 1, 2, and 3, all new construction projects. The proposed finance structure and project budget and uses can be found on page 4 of the for action. The estimated construction timeline can be found on page 5. The recommendation to adopt resolution number 156 provides official intent to issue tax-exempt bonds for the benefit of the project, but it is non-binding and does not commit HHFDC or the state of Hawaii to issue or authorize the sale of tax-exempt bonds for the project. Resolution 156 does allow the applicant to reimburse eligible expenditures made 60 days prior to its adoption with bond proceeds. If the resolution is approved, Staff will work with the applicant, bond counsel, and other appropriate parties to determine the feasibility of the bond issuance for the project. If feasible, staff will return to the board with a request to adopt a resolution to authorize issuance of tax-exempt bonds for the project, and such issuance is subject to the approval by the Department of Budget and Finance and the governor. The recommendation for the 4% LIHTC is in accordance with the qualified allocation plan. Staff recommends approval of the request for the adoption of the resolution representing official intent and the reservation of 4% LIHTC as the assumptions and projections for the construction of the project appear reasonable. At this time, Ms. Marian Gushigan of the project team will present an overview of the project. Following their presentation, staff as well as the project team will be available for questions.
All right, thanks.
Good morning, board chair and directors, as well as HHFDC staff. I wanted to thank Jocelyn for her thorough staff report as usual. The staff report focuses on the basic facts of the project, so I thought we would present a bit more of the context and then a little bit about design, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have. I'm going to try to share my screen. Can you see this first slide?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this project actually came to us slightly differently than what we're typically used to, in that we weren't looking for it, it sort of came to us. And the original concept for the project was initiated by a local veterans group based in Hilo, the Hawaii Island Veterans Memorial, Inc., which sought to create a one-stop services hub to serve its veterans. So the initial concept was to co-locate senior housing as well as a veteran center outpatient clinic. And the group has been working on this vision for these parcels for about 15 years, possibly more. And they've made significant headway, but along the way, they've also determined that they needed a housing developer to assist them with the carrying out of the housing piece. So that's where we stepped in. The site is located at the corner of Kapiolani Street and West Kaludi Street in Hilo. It's a great location, just across the street from the UH Hilo campus, across from Waikia High School. Most of the services that are probably needed, shopping, retail, health services, public services, are all within about a mile or two of the site. So the concept is to serve seniors age 62 or older with a preference for veterans and surviving spouses. The site will be comprised of 4 buildings, 4 residential buildings, along with a community building to serve the residents. So the surrendered site plan was done about a year and a half ago, but the basic building parking configurations remain the same. There have been some tweaks to it. So as Jocelyn mentioned, 4 residential buildings. At the core of each cluster, we have a central laundry as well as the elevator. Fronting the parcel along West Cooley Street is the community building, which will house our management offices as well as some of the amenities to serve our residents. 157 stalls and lots of outdoor space as well. Floor plan of our community center. It's sort of separated into 2 wings. On the right-hand side are our management offices, as well as a fitness center and lounge area with a wall of computers for computer access. It opens out into an open lanai that's covered, and then moves into the multi-purpose room with a kitchen, as well as some back of house spaces. The elevations are pretty much the same. Again, at the core, bottom left of the elevation is where the laundry facility is, along with the elevator to serve the residents within each building cluster. So you can walk up or take the elevator. And this is a little bit cluttered, but it's a basic configuration of our one-bedroom units. All of the units are one bedrooms except for our staff unit, laid out generally the same way. And that's it. We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Marian. Is there any questions from the board? No? I know this plan has been a long time coming, huh?
It has. We're happy to be here.
Thanks for moving forward. Right, if there's no questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item 3E, related. Approve a rental housing revolving fund project award for the West Kawili Street Senior Veterans Housing Project located in Hilo, Hawaii, TMK 324057030. Can I get a motion, please?
So move.
Thanks, Carol.
Second.
Thanks, Gary.
The subject for action requests the approval of a rental housing revolving fund award for the West Kawili Senior Veteran Housing Project. The rental housing revolving fund program provides equity gap, low interest loans to qualified owners and developers that are constructing, acquiring, or rehabilitating affordable rental housing units. On February 17, 2021, Hilo Nakua LP submitted a request for approximately $16.5 million for a rental housing revolving fund loan for the West Kawili Kawili Street Senior Veteran Housing Project. The project also submitted a request for the tax exempt bond issuance and a reservation, which was just approved in the previous for action. As this is the same project in the previous for action, I won't repeat the project details. Recommended loan terms of the loan can be found on page 4 of the for action. Loan amount $16,563,385. Interest rate 0% interest rate for years 1 to 3. The reason for the 0% interest rate is recommended as project operations have not commenced, eliminates the need to track and establish an interest reserve, and allows time for the project stabilization. Interest rate after the 3 years is 0.25, term 55 years, 3 years construction phase, 52 years permanent phase. Repayment years 1 to 3, no payments as that's construction. After year 3, 75% of available cash payments of expenses, senior debt, and other recognized expenses. Projected balance at the end of the 55-year maturity is approximately $6.7 million. The recommendation can be found on page 5 of the for action. Staff is available for questions as well as the project development team.
All right, thanks, Jocelyn. Any questions from the board? No. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 3F. This is to approve resolution number 157, which provides for official intent with respect to the issuance of Willow May multifamily tax exempt revenue bonds, and 2, reservation of low-income housing tax credits for the Hale Viliko Highlands project located in Aiea, Oahu, TMK 199078076. Can I get a motion, please?
So move.
Second, Don.
Oh, thanks, Mel. Thanks, Gary.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. The subject for action requests the adoption of resolution number 157, which provides for the official intent to issue Hulume multifamily revenue bonds and the reservation of 4% low-income housing tax credits. As Jocelyn discussed, I'll be skipping over the details of the Hulume multifamily bond program and the 4% LIHTC program, as details of the 2 programs remain the same. On February 17, 2021, Hale Viliko Highlands LP submitted a request for a tax-exempt bond issuance amount of $26,750,000 and $1,919,262 in annual federal 4% low-income housing tax credits over a 10-year period, and that same amount in annual state 4% low-income housing tax credits over a 5-year period. The bond and tax credit resource request shall support the development of Halebiliko Highlands, a newly constructed 140-unit affordable housing rental facility with 1 manager's unit, targeting elderly households earning 30 to 60% AMGI in IAEA in the county of Honolulu. Construction consists of 1 3-story residential building. The building will be a type VA construction with a concrete slab on grade foundation and light gauge metal wall framing. Halebiliko Highlands LP is a single asset real estate holding company specifically established to develop, own, and operate the project. Its general partner is HKI Halebiliko LLC, whose sole member is Hui Kau Hale Incorporated, a 501c3 corporation that was established in 1996 to develop and own affordable housing. Their most recent completed projects include Nahona Hale, Ula Ka'ilima Arts-Based Lofts, and Eva Villages phases 1, 2, and 3. Costs of the projects are highlighted in Exhibit A of the Financing and Cost section. The recommendation to adopt Resolution Number 157 provides official intent to issue tax-exempt bonds for the benefit of the project, but it is non-binding and does not commit HHFDC or the state of Hawaii to issue or authorize the sale of tax-exempt bonds for the project. Resolution number 157 does allow the applicant to reimburse eligible expenditures made 60 days prior to its adoption with bond proceeds. If HHFDC's board approves resolution number 157, staff will work with the applicant, bond counsel, and other appropriate parties to determine the feasibility of the bond issuance for the project. If feasible, staff shall return to the board with a request to adopt a resolution to authorize issuance of tax-exempt bonds. Such issuance is subject to approval by the Department of Budget and Finance and the governor. The recommendation of the 4% tax credits is in accordance with the Qualified Allocation Plan. Staff recommends approval of the request for the adoption of the resolution, representing official intent and the reservation of 4% tax credits as assumptions and projections of the planned development appear reasonable. Please note in Exhibit F of the 4 action, the adoption date should reflect today's date of July 9, 2021. And I apologize for the oversight. Staff is available for questions, as well as Marion Bishkin and Kevin Carney of the development team. I'm also inviting Marion Bishkin of EAH Housing to share a quick presentation and some words regarding Halebiliko Highlands.
Chair Mende?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, I hadn't mentioned earlier. I'd like to recuse myself from the discussion and vote. Laniakea Pacific has been talking with the developers on some program opportunities within the development.
Okay. Thanks, Rona. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair, board members, and staff. I'm going to try to share the screen here. Okay, I assume you can see the first slide?
Yep.
Okay, terrific. So this project actually came to us through a more traditional route, which is through a City of Honolulu RFP that was issued in 2018 for the site of the old IAEA sugar mill, the iconic sugar mill that had been in the community for decades. And private owner picked it up, I think in the 90s, tried to redevelop the site, could not. And in the interim, I think a bank picked it up, did some limited cleanup work, and then the city purchased the site in 2002. That's when they issued the RFP. Luckily for us, in anticipation of the demise of the sugar mill and redevelopment of the site, the community had already undergone extensive community planning efforts for what they envisioned the site could hold and how it could benefit the community. So this is the master plan that was developed back in 2002. The first phase of it, the IAEA Public Library, has already been constructed. That's over on the left. The master plan did anticipate some senior housing. I think back then it was anticipated to be in the form of some sort of assisted living, combination of assisted living and independent living units. But when we responded to the RFP, we proposed, of course, rental housing serving lower income residents. So the site is very well located in Aiea. It's above the H1 freeway on a main bus route, and then walking distance to some of the services just down the way. This is the proposed site plan. It's configured in a T, inverted T, and this was specific. I assume you can't see my mouse, can you?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, you can, great. Okay, we did this deliberately to stay out of the flood plains that are here, shown by these dashed lines. So the green space takes up this area, and we wanted to try to site the building improvements and parking improvements out of that flood zone. So entry comes off of two streets that are currently in existence through the parking that sits in the front of the site. The main entry is here, where visitors and residents would enter into the core. And then each wing here contains the residential units. And we'll get into a little bit of this detail. I did want to say that the site plan was rendered again about a year ago. So we actually have 56 one-bedroom units and added a single two-bedroom manager's unit to this area of the site. So it's still 140 units. And oops, and we also managed to find one more parking space. Okay. This is just a close-up of the core area of the building. So again, management offices in the front, along with some amenities, including a tech lounge and community multipurpose room that opens up onto an activity lanai. We're excited about this particular opportunity to partner with Laniakea Pacific to operate one of their Kupuna wellness centers. Hopefully that will come to fruition. The wellness center will serve both residents on site, as well as, if there's space available, members of the public. Second and third floors, basically the same. The units stack, so there's a core area that we would configure for lobby and fitness rooms. Each floor also has a laundry facility. Typical unit configuration, studios and one bedrooms. The front entry rendering, and then the back against the multi-purpose room, which opens out into the Great Lawn area. And again, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thanks. Board members, anybody have any questions? Okay, I guess not. I just have one quick one, Marion. So you mentioned that, so none of the living area is going to be in a flood zone, right? That's why you specifically structured that way.
Right.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had. I guess this call for a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Moving item 2. 3G. This is to approve a rental housing revolving fund project award for the Hale Viliko Highlands project located in Aiea, Oahu, TMK 199078006. Can I get a motion, please?
So move.
Second.
Thank you.
Chair Mende, Rona,
Yes,
similar,
Yes.
similar to the previous item, I'd like to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you.
Subject for action, request the approval of a rental housing revolving fund award for the Hale Viliko Highlands project located NIAO. The Rental Housing Revolving Fund Project Award Program provides an equity gap, low interest loans to qualified owners and developers constructing, acquiring, or rehabilitating affordable housing units. On February 17, 2021, Polybilico Highlands submitted an application for rental housing revolving funds, as well as the Hula May multifamily bond and 4% LIHTC as the previous 4 action as mentioned. This is the same project as the previous 4 actions, so details remain the same. The project requests a rental housing revolving fund award of $23,792,353, subject to the approval of the governor, successful negotiations of final terms and conditions of the award, and execution of loan documentation satisfactory to HHFDC. Details of the rental housing revolving fund award. A loan amount of $23,792,353. For years 1 to 3, there will be a 0% interest rate. And after year 3, there will be a 0.25% interest rate. A term and maturity of 57 years. Years 1 to 3 will be no payments, as that will be the interim and construction phase period. And for the next 50 years following that will be the permanent phase with 80% of available cash flow, with repayment of 80% of available cash flow. Staff recommends approval of the rental housing revolving fund award for the project as assumptions and projections of the project appear reasonable. Staff is available for questions, as well as Marian Gushkin and Kevin Carney of the development team.
All right, thanks. Any questions from the board? No, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Moving item number 3H. This is to approve resolution number 158, which provides official intent with respect to the issuance of Hula May multifamily tax-exempt revenue bonds, and 2, reservation of low-income housing tax credits for the Hale'o Pi'ikea project, 1 project located in Kihei, Maui, TMK 239002076. Can I get a motion, please?
Second, Don.
Oh, thank you.
Hello again. Thank you for the opportunity to present this for action. Approval of resolution number 158, providing for official intent to issue Hula May multifamily tax-exempt revenue bonds, along with the reservation of low-income housing tax credits for the Hale'o Pi'ikea 1 project located in Kihei, Maui. Project is 90 units, new construction, affordable rental housing development, comprised of 2 4-story buildings, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, and serving families earning 60% of the area gross median income and below. The project does provide off-street parking, solar energy production. It has community gardens, a large community resource center for supportive social services for the residents of Hale'o Pi'ikea. The request is for the tax exempt issuance of $28,800,000 from the Hula May multifamily bond program, as well as $2,262,499 in annual federal low-income housing tax credits over a 10-year period, same amount in annual state low-income housing tax credits over a 5-year period. And this is from the non-volume cap pool, so that's 4% as clarification. The project will also be, and I'll be presenting shortly after this, the rental housing revolving loan of up to $12,735,000. The project's estimated construction timeline, we anticipate building permits in February of 2022. Construction will commence shortly thereafter. That is in March of 2022. The first building will be complete in May of 2023, and the final building will be completed in September of 2023. I'd like to invite members of the development team, including Mr. Chris Flaherty, as well as Mr. Kali Watson, to provide you more detail about the project, as they are very excited to share with you all of the efforts and work that they've put into this.
Is that Mr. Watson's dog?
Yes.
I think it was.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kali Watson, hello, Chairman and members of the board. I'm along with Chris Flaherty, my partner, as well as our development team, Patty Barbie, Keegan Flaherty, and Alicia Rui. As you can see, basically we have a pretty senior development. We're looking at the Kihei, downtown Kihei area. It's centrally located. There's a tremendous need for this particular project. We've met with the communities out there, KCA and SMAC, and they've all, kind of have literally provided written support. Went through a whole charrette with them, made revisions to the design to address their concerns, and we met with the Mayor Victor Reno and his staff, and they also like the project to the extent of $5 million they put on the table, and to help the project move along with the support of the county council. So yes, we are. It has been a long process. We'd like to thank Chris Oakes for his help. He's been very supportive and provided us guidance through the HHFDC process. As you can see, we have a good development team, but also design partners. Mark Development, who has and is managing quite a few of our projects, is also involved. We have a legal. We're working with Hawaiian Community Assets to, recruit some really good tenants for the project locally, and then we have a local planning consultant from Maui. As you can see, it's part of a master plan. This is phase one, the 90 units, affordable rental housing for families, all below 6% AMI. Later, we'll do some other projects in phase 2 and 3. And in particular, this, as Chris has mentioned, we'll have not only parking, but various amenities, as well as working with the different service providers to, really enhance not only the tenancy, but more importantly, programs that will assist the community at large. And as Chris mentioned, that's our timeline. So we hope to get started in March of next year. And, with about 1.5 years construction, we should have both buildings up along with the resource center. So we appreciate your support, and we look forward to your action. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the board?
Chair, I have a question for Kali, actually. Kali, hi. Last month, we were talking about this project in the context of a 9% award, and staff raised some concerns about the community center, both in terms of its size and its use. It seemed like an unresolved issue last month. Has that been resolved, and can you explain how that was addressed?
Sure. Yeah, we not only took a look at the IRS code, we had several of our legal consultants take a look at it. We also brought in our CPA, analyzed it, and they came to the same conclusion. We worked with the Attorney General's office, the state, as well as staff at HHFDC to make sure that not only it was a qualified basis to include the areas that we're anticipating using, but more importantly, that we executed certain agreements that not only committed the exclusive use of that particular community areas to the tenants themselves for the project. So with that in mind, along with the written commitment, as well as the supporting analysis, both legally and from a accounting perspective, we feel very, very comfortable that we'll be able to comply.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So that area will be committed to for the use of the residents.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you. And any other questions? No, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 3I. This is to approve a rental housing revolving fund project award for the Halio PEKL project located in Kihei, Maui, TMK 239002076. Can I get a motion, please?
So move to approve the staff recommendation.
Thanks, Mike.
Second.
Thanks, Gary.
I do thank you again. I did actually want to go back and address on the previous for action item H of the agenda. Please note that the Exhibit F resolution number 158 needs to reflect July 8th of 2021. It was my error that I put 2020, unfortunately. Yeah. So if you can keep that in mind, thank you.
Do we need to? Oh, I see it.
Oh, it's a friendly amendment to the motion to accept their corrections.
Okay.
The technical corrections.
Do we need to revote or that's just?
I don't think we need to revote. I'm just restating that the motion is as corrected.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Thank you again allowing me to present this for action as it relates to the previous for action Halio PEKL Phase 1 rental housing revolving fund. We are requesting an amount of $12,735,000 following initial construction period, years 1 through 2, no interest. After year 2, it will be 25 basis points or 0.25%, maturity of 55 years. We have conducted analysis and the project's loan to value ratio shall not exceed 100%, which is within our regulations and rules, and abides of them, and no disbursement of the developer fee until satisfactory completion of the project. And if so, I seek the board's recommendation, and I recommend to the board and their approval that you award Halio PEKL 1 the $12,735,000 of rental housing revolving funds for the benefit of Halio PEKL Phase 1.
Right. Any questions from the board? No. All for questions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Right. Moving on to item 3J. This is to approve the proposed amendment to increase the administrative fee under the good faith deposit provision in the low income housing tax credit programs 2022-2023 qualified allocation plan previously approved for public hearing. Can I get a motion, please?
Motion done.
Thanks, Mel. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thanks, Harry.
Thanks again. I appreciate the opportunity to present this for action. As it relates again to a proposed amendment, looking to increase the administrative fee under the good faith deposit provision, the low income housing tax credit programs 2022-2023 qualified allocation plan, which was approved for public hearing at last board meeting. The proposed amendment, we are looking to increase the percent of the good faith deposit retained by the agency from 60 to 80%. And this increase is necessary in order for us to continue to attract, retain qualified workforce, as well as ensure the successful administration of our multifamily programs. Our tentative timeline is, if approval today, July 8th, we're looking to publish notice this month. We will then conduct our public hearing sometime during August or September. We will recommend, hopefully, final approval of the QAP based upon the public hearing October or November. And then again, we are looking that this be effectuated prior to January 1st, which is the date statutorily required in order for the agency to change the amount retained in relation to the good faith deposit. And it's going to be consolidated into one document, which will be the June amendment. And again, this is in relation to the 2022-2023 qualified allocation plan, which was previously approved at last board meeting.
Okay. Any questions from the board? I just have one. This is to increase the percentage retained, not actually increase the deposit itself, right?
No, that's correct.
Okay.
The deposit amount will remain at 10%. It's the amount that we retain. It's going to be from 60% to now 80%. And again, it's to help sustain our ability to effectuate the multifamily program and ensure its continued success.
All right, if there's no other questions, all in favor?
Aye.
I do have to note, before action says Exhibit A, and again, my apologies, somehow formatting, it says Exhibit B. So my apologies for that, but yes.
Okay. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. And it's already been almost 2 hours into it, so you guys want to take a short break?
Sounds good, Don.
10 minutes is good, or?
10 is fine.
Okay. Come back in 10 minutes.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. I guess it's 10 minutes. Is everybody back?
This is how we dress it, deep in for the pandemic.
Looks like it, huh? Okay, I guess I did. Next item one is the overview from the executive director, but I think Sandy wanted to bring up some items, right? Sandy, is this when you wanted to mention, or?
Denise, do you want me to wait until after your ED report?
It's up to you. We can do it now if the chair.
No, it doesn't matter. Either way.
Why don't we just wait till the end of the meeting, Denise?
Okay.
Okay.
Right before adjournment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Aloha and good morning, board members. I just wanted to, first of all, congratulate our new and continuing officers. We recognize, as volunteers, how much you sacrifice in order to serve. And, we truly do appreciate it, all your knowledge, your experience, for all board members and your dedication to this board in particular. Thank you so much. It means so much to the staff here at HHFDC and also to affordable housing in the entire state. So thank you. So I know you have my report. I wanted to point out just a couple of things. The first thing is regarding our mortgage credit certificate program. I think it's under Exhibit A. We wanted to plan to issue new mortgage credit certificates. Last year we had elected to convert 101 million in private activity bond authority for MCC authority. However, the exchange was never completed due to inadequate staffing as a result of the hiring freeze put in place by the budget constraints following the pandemic. 30 million of the 101 million will expire at the end of this year. The remaining 71 million is set to expire at the end of 2022. So with the December 2021 deadline approaching for the 30 million, we want to inform the board that we will be issuing new mortgage credit certificates. It's been a while since we issued new MCCs. This program offers qualified buyers an opportunity to reduce their federal tax liability and increase their take-home pay. It's been dormant. I know governor's office did get a few complaints that were channeled back down to us in the beginning of the year. So very happy that we can offer this to home buyers. We will be publishing a public notice announcing the conversion to MCC. Francis Kino and Nathan Akamu will also be meeting with participating lenders to prepare for the launch of this program. Happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
I just have one point, Mr. Chair. The 30 million on the mortgage revenue bonds when exchanged and converted to the mortgage credit certificate is at a 4-to-1 ratio. So that means there's like $7.5 million for the mortgage credit. So just wanted to share that information. From the 30 million, it's a 4-to-1 conversion. So it's 7.5 million for the mortgage credit certificates. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, if there are no questions, item B is contracts and change orders. I'm sorry, I don't have anything in particular to point out there, but happy to take any questions you may have. Item C is the House and Senate bills that were key this past session. I just want to give kudos to Janice Takahashi and Mavis Masaki for shepherding these key bills through each committee and getting it passed this session. It is in Exhibit C of your board packets, kind of like the third or fourth bill down. First one is House Bill 77, became Act 64. This is very key for those residents that have a lease interest, are trying to buy the fee interest, in their homes and have to go through that year-long process through the legislature in order to get approval. Well, this bill helps those residents cross the finish line to true home ownerships and relieves our RESS unit from the administrative burden of filing a concurrent resolution for each transaction. So these families are going to be very happy. Next bill is House Bill 79, now Act 227. It allows HHFDC to provide seed money for self-help type housing projects often seen in our rural communities. It establishes a new revolving fund. Will take some time for us to ramp up. We have to do admin rules and then staff up for it. But this provides another tool for true home ownership using sweat equity from the families to help buy down the cost. The last bill is House Bill 80, now Act 226, which extends the shortened equity period of the LIHTC credit for another 6 years and helps preserve the value of the state tax credit and ultimately helps preserve affordable housing. So those are the three bills I wanted to highlight for your attention. And I think ask you if you had any other questions in the executive director's report. I'm happy to answer it. At this time, any questions?
I got a question, Chair. Have House Bill 79 and 80 been signed by the governor?
Yes. So House Bill 79 is now Act 227 and House Bill 80 is now Act 226.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Any other questions?
Denise, I actually had a question about the mortgage credit certificate.
Sure.
Is there a communication plan that you're preparing, or does that come from the participating lenders?
I think it normally comes from the lenders, but we do have a public notice going out announcing the conversion, but I'm going to turn it over to Francis to see what the communication plan is for this.
Plan to meet and discuss with the participating lenders in the 20-25 participating lenders. And as Denise mentioned, there is a public notice that goes out, and it's like we have to wait for 90 days before we can actually issue a certificate to the lender or the borrower. And this time, that's the extent of our communication plan. But if the board members have suggestions on what we can do to further provide notice to either the lenders or the borrowers, the public, happy to entertain those suggestions.
So Director Fukumoto, I will work with the deputy on this. It should be a communication plan of ours, and we will work with the lenders on it. Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we do have some new staff on board, and the first of the one we'd like to announce, if he will open his camera, we'd like to introduce you to our new public relations officer. He is a 30-year veteran journalist and formerly with the Star Advertiser, Gordon Pang, has recently joined our team. We also have new team members in our planning compliance. Janice Takahashi, would you like to introduce the new members of your team?
Thank you, Denise. Yeah, I'm really happy, and I have this opportunity to introduce you to two new planners in the planning, evaluate, and real estate branch. The first one is Carrie Higa. Carrie is our housing planner 3. She will be working on the consolidated plan and other plans, but a lot of focus on the con plan. Carrie comes from the Department of Land and Natural Resources, Harbors, Alawai Small Board Harbor. Also, I'd like to introduce to you Lance Yamamoto Dong. Lance will be working on, she will be our real estate and compliance specialist, working on asset management and fair housing. So maybe if I could just ask you to come up and say hello.
Hello, good morning. I'm Carrie. So happy to be here, and I so appreciate this opportunity to learn and serve you all.
Welcome aboard. Thanks.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lons, and like Carrie, I'm very, very honored and excited to be here. So thank you very much for this welcome.
That's great. Welcome aboard, everybody.
Thank you very much, Chair, members. That concludes the Executive Director's report. I could turn it over to our Deputy Attorney General, Sandy Ching, regarding the expiration, I guess, of Governor's Proclamation and the impact on sunshine laws and our open meetings.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I think it's still morning. Yes. So just a heads up that we wanted to share with the board that the governor's 21st emergency proclamation is set to expire on August 6th, 2021. He has indicated that this may be his last emergency proclamation. We do not know. I know the governor's office, Department of Health is watching the variants closely. So we just thought it prudent to give the board members a head up that in the event the emergency proclamation expires on August 6th, and he does not extend the emergency proclamation, the Sunshine Law suspension allowing remote board meetings will expire, and the Sunshine Law requirement of in-person attendance will resume under HRS Chapter 92. Of course, this is all dependent upon what actions the governor takes with respect to the EP. As soon as the AG's office and HHFDC receive any information regarding what's going to occur, and we hope to get some more color in the next 2 or 3 weeks, Essa and myself will definitely communicate to the board members what to expect for the August board meeting, detailing any information that we receive. But we just kind of wanted to put this on the forefront. We do want to note that in the event the EP expires and the current suspension is removed and we go back to the Sunshine Law that's enacted in law, board members can remotely attend, but there's going to be it goes back to the pre-requirements where when ESSA files her agenda, we will have to note the physical location of where you're attending from at the time we file the agenda, which is 6 days before the meeting, and specify that any members of the public can attend from that site in person along with you. The pandemic allowed the EP, Sunshine Line, to be suspended, and the governor set forth guidance allowing remote. So we just don't know, but we thought it would be prudent to forewarn or just give a heads up as soon as we find out more information. My office is very aware of issues that may be facing boards, but we just do not have any color as to what will occur with the emergency proclamation. Right at this static point in time, we do not have any further information. And feel free, if you have questions, to email myself or Essa. And like I said, any further communication or direction will probably come from both of us as soon as we hear. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, I guess we'll just wait and see. We'll be standing by. Is there anything else? If not, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thanks, Kim. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Welcome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.